Good morning, everybody. It is day 38 of spiritual healthcare, so welcome to all of you. It is so good to see people logging in the morning, and I hope you guys are having a really great day. It's really sunny outside here. I don't know about everybody in wherever you are. Hopefully it's as nice where you are as it is here. Hopefully we're gonna be able to get outside today because it's been ridiculously windy here in Alberta. So I don't know about where you guys are from, but it is really good to see everyone this morning. We've got some really cool subjects today that I really want to delve into. One being a topic that has been coming up more and more frequently, which is the Wendigo, and some of the First Nation stories that have been passed down within Alberta, within all sorts of different cultures in the United States as well. And just throughout the Americas. It's a really fascinating tale, and with it coming into spring now, then it's a good time to rehash on, I think, some of the winter months as well. I also got a great question in from Dan today about mediumship. So we're going to be talking about mediumship also, and what is it that is perceived when we get people reporting being able to be a medium or receive messages and stuff like that, and tuning in to non-physical. So we'll talk about that as well. Hello, Arnold. Good morning, Jay. Good morning, Will. Good morning, Des, Patricia, everybody. It's nice to see you. I'm excited about this subject today because, as I say, I want to talk about what creates stories and legends and mythos and things like that, and what it is that has fueled the Wendigo legend and phenomenon for so long. A friend of mine, Chad Lewis, he just released a book recently on the Wendigo, and I haven't read it yet, but it's in pre-production right now. It looks like it's going to be awesome. And I've had some interesting Wendigo experiences myself, so it should be interesting to be able to share that. Good morning, Brandy. How are you guys? It is nice to see all of you this morning. I hope you guys had a great evening yesterday. We were very windy here. I was going to say very, very windy. You guys are cloudy in Maryland, I'm reading. That's like, yeah, it's that time of year, isn't it? It's just that time of year. We're going to be like up and down in weather, I think, for a little bit, but most of us are inside anyway. So it's just, does the weather matter right now? I don't know if it does or not. So yeah, it's one of those seasons. But in terms of the mediumship aspect of it, I thought Dan had a really great question, which we're going to be delving into, all about not only not necessarily what mediumship is, but how it is done, how it's received, and I want to talk a little bit as well about the difference between the real deal and being able to perceive some of this stuff, and the frauds and the scams out there as well, because I think with a lot of the with COVID-19, I know there's been an explosion in scams and things like that. So we'll talk about that too, because I'm sure we're probably going to see it ramp up within the world of psychics and stuff like that also. So you guys should know what to look out for. I think that's super important. So that being said, I want to start there. Because as I say, we're in this weird time right now, right? Where we've got all of this stuff going on with COVID-19. We've got the phone scams and whatever that are kind of ramping up. And I think my prediction is that we're probably going to see a ramp up in scams such as psychics and that kind of thing also. So you guys should know what to look for. What is the genuine deal and what isn't? So when there are a few institutions, good morning, Kathy, good morning, Kaz, it's nice to see you guys, as always. It's just so good to see everybody logging in the morning. I just love it. It's so cool. So let's talk a little bit about mediumship. So Dan's original question was, we brought up mediums. I've been trying to find out how mediums perceive their gifts. Seeing true talent work is one thing. How they hear or see it, I've never heard one describe it. So I thought this was a fantastic question and a really great place to start our morning, because it is so much about all the things that we've talked about prior, which is really getting in tune with that stillness, with who you are, and being able to quiet your mind enough to listen. You know, so many people, we're trying to force so much, right? Many times when I get people who have lost a loved one, or who have something has gone on over the years, where they have, wanted this so badly to be able to, communicate with non-physical and stuff like that, they're often trying so hard to do it. And that's usually what's getting in people's way. They're trying and trying and trying, and that trying is creating a resistance between themselves and what they want and who they are. And that ability to allow the communication rather than try and force it and seek it gets lost. It just kind of gets lost in translation. So that's one of the first things that I've always heard people who have a really strong ability to tune into non-physical describe right away, is that it's not a matter of forcing something. It's not a matter of chasing it or trying to grab onto it in various different ways. It's a matter of getting still and allowing those messages to flow. And sometimes it's not words. I think that's one of the big misconceptions about a lot of this, is that people often think that it's word related, and it's not word related usually. Oftentimes it's emotional, or it's people have described, Esther Hicks has described it as blocks of thought that are received and that she then translates. It's really interesting. Like, they will, sometimes people will receive an image. A fellow that I work with very closely on investigations, he's an incredible medium. He receives images in symbols. And sometimes that can be very interesting because it can be very cryptic, but the symbols, sometimes they'll mean nothing to him. It'll be a, mother goose with a hat and a cane or something like that. And then all of a sudden we discover that, there's something related to nursery rhymes or something like that within within that case, or within the space that he's in. So it's very intriguing. So when we get to things like psychometry, for instance, and psychometry, for those of you guys who don't know, it's basically being able to pick up an object, and as you're holding the object, get into that state of allowing and almost being able to read or interpret the residual energy, I guess, around whatever that object happens to be. So, and people will come up with entire histories, the names of prior owners, all sorts of crazy things. So psychometry is really good. My dad was extremely good at it. He would guess Christmas presents, and it drove everybody insane. No, you couldn't give him a present ever, because he would turn around and he'd pick it up. There'd be no clue as to what it was, like to feel it or on the outside of the gift or anything like that. And he would immediately figure out what it was. Drove everybody nuts. But it's really interesting. So one of the first things, as I say, that I think people have misconstrued about mediumship and things like that, is that it's about the seeking of something else, where in fact it really is about the allowing. A lot of the mediums associated with the Windbridge Research Institute and places like that have described something very similar, where it is about getting still. It is about that allowing that joy to kind of rise, and then they start to receive the either the messages or emotions or blocks of thought within that frequency. So that would be the one thing as well that I've heard multiple people with mediumship skills describe too, is being very careful where they begin to tune in on that emotional scale. So, are they are they turning around and, trying to force or focus communication when they're feeling bad or down, or are they allowing and letting their vibration and emotions raise to joy so that what they're receiving are joyous messages and positivity and that kind of thing. So that's something I've heard them be extremely conscious of too. But that state of allowing is key amongst all of them. Everybody, I think, has a different way of doing it. Some people seem to be able to tune in a little bit easier than other people. I'm a big believer of the fact that everybody can do this. I don't think you have to have a special skill or a medium or something like that to be able to communicate with non-physical. I think that's something that everybody's capable of. But some people have learned how to still themselves enough in order to receive that on a more regular basis. So how they have seen or heard, that's what I've come to understand about it. And I think the people who are the real deal and the genuine deal are those that are going to be offering positive, happy messages that are joyous, because the ones that are giving warnings and negative things and telling people they're cursed and all that kind of thing, that's not coming from non-physical. That's coming from something else. That's not good. You don't want to be doing that. Arnold's got a really good question. He asked, can a demon also be deceiving a psychic into believing they are somebody who is passed? So typically I don't use the word demon because I think it's kind of like, it's a little dated. It's got the religious context to it. But I think some of these negative intelligences, sure, like if you are perceiving something that is, like say for example, a little child who, is suddenly biting and scratching and setting house fires or something like that, that's not children behavior, right? Like that's something else. That's not a child, that's something else. There was a case by the name that's known as the Sally house, the Sally case. And this is one of those incidents where a medium that was known as Peter James had gone into the Picton household and picked up on what he believed was this little girl named Sally. And in my opinion, it wasn't a little girl at all. It was something completely different. But he believed that it was Sally and things like that. So I think there is a level where you have to be perceptive and understand what you're dealing with. However, I would also add to that if you are tuning in and allowing your emotional state to raise enough, and you get in that receptive range of joy and passion, and you just allow that to flow through you, you're not going to be getting and communicating with those entities anyway. You're going to be communicating with something that's pure positive energy and joy and fun and all of that. So it really does, again, depend on where you're tuning into, right, as to what you're going to get. So Darren wants to know, am I a type of medium? As I say, I think everybody is. I think everybody can do it. I've definitely picked up on, messages and emotions and, all of that kind of thing, blocks of thought from non-physical energy. I think everybody is capable of doing it. Everybody. We've all got it. It depends on how good we are at stilling ourselves and being able to listen, recognize, and translate that. I think that's really what it comes down to. Can you quiet yourself enough, and can you raise your vibration enough? Can you allow enough joy to be able to translate this? I think that's really key. Some really great resources for you guys to check out in regards to this would be the Windbridge Institute. Windbridge Research, they are amazing. So windbridge.org, I will post the link on Entity Seeker. They are the leading researchers in mediumship, in my opinion. I think they're incredible people. They've pioneered so much, and they have one of the only list of scientifically tested mediums, as far as I know, in the world. So they're incredible people. They would be one major resource. Abraham Hicks is another incredible channel. Esther Hicks. The Seth Research Institute is another one. Seth is quite something. That was channeled through Jane Roberts. And that was an incredible group of sessions as well. And the nice thing is, no matter where you fall on whether you believe in it or not, it really doesn't matter, because the information is so positive, it's so good that, I mean, no matter where you think the information is coming from, it's useful. It's useful. So those are definitely the ones that I would check out. So when it comes to things like mediumship, as I say, one of the researchers that I work with he's been incredible at this for years, and he had a very, very interesting childhood, and he ended up tied in with his mediumship abilities to a very famous story and historical event in Alberta that had to do with the Wendigo. And that's why I'm bringing up the Wendigo, because Alberta is, for those of you guys who have not been or don't know much about Alberta, we are very much a prairie country here. So lots of farmland. There were plenty of First Nations settlements. So we had the Cree, the Métis, the Papas Chase, all of these different groups who had settled within Alberta, and it wasn't. With them came these incredible encounters with this bizarre creature that they called the Wendigo, and it was this negative spirit that's been described in a multitude of different ways, depending on which region that you go to. That's described differently, but the idea is that whenever there is famine or isolation, long winters, and that kind of thing, the idea is that this if you see this creature, you see this entity, it has the capability of possessing you and then turning around and having you eat the people that are around you, so family and things like that. Really terrifying story. And in Alberta, we had one of our first legal hanging in Alberta actually had to do with a Wendigo case. So in Alberta, it's become a very big topic in many ways. There was a fellow by the name of Swift Runner who was a trapper, and he lived just north of Edmonton, and he ended up being ostracized. Him and his family were ostracized due to his what we're assuming was his drinking. Like, he had some bad behavior going on, and the community, his community at the time said, like, you're out, get out, you're too much trouble. So he and his family ended up in this isolated on this little island in a lake, and this frozen lakes. It was winter at the time. And the next time anybody heard from him, he was at the Lacombe Mission in St. Albert. This was late 1800s, and he knocked on the door, and Father Lacombe, opened the door, and Swift Runner told him this really long story about how his family had starved to death. They had no food. It was this freezing winter, and he needed shelter. So the father at the time, they let him into this little mission, which is still in St. Albert, by the way. It is still standing. And they were very suspicious of his story, like very, very suspicious. He was a huge guy, about 6'4", 200 plus pounds. And he didn't look like he was starving at all. Like, he looked pretty healthy. So they were a little bit suspicious, but they let him stay because they knew him. And as the story went on, they began to hear him howling in the night and complaining that this Wendigo was coming in his window. So he was freaking out, and he was really terrified that this creature was attacking him. And eventually the Northwest Mounted Police was called down. They arrested him, and long story short, it turned out that he actually had murdered his entire family and eaten them. So when they got him back out to the site, they just discovered this horrible crime scene. But so what was interesting about this story, apart from the shock value of it, was that when my friend Matt had moved into his house in St. Albert, he ended up when he was little, he was 2-3 years old. He ended up starting to have these nightmares of this long, sort of gangly dog-like creature that was coming in his window at night, and trying to attack him, like getting in his face, and all sorts of just bizarre things. and he started to pick up on all of these bizarre notions that didn't make any sense, and he ended up with a burning rash on his hands and feet. He had a horrific fever, his face swelled up, and they took him to the hospital. So, as I said, at this time he was really, really young. And what nobody knew at this point, the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with him, but what nobody knew at this point was the fact that the legend and the stories that people that report of the Wendigo involve the victims having this rash on their hands and feet with swelling and fever and that kind of thing, and then all of a sudden, and then of course reporting these creatures, coming through the window and stuff like that. So it was very interesting because it seemed like, looking back on that he was picking up possibly on the thought forms in the area of what had happened, because the house he moved into was walking distance to this mission in St. Albert. It was really interesting. So the doctors still have no idea what caused it, what happened to him. He, eventually got better. They moved out of that house. Matt has always had just incredible experiences go on around him. He's seen everything. But that went on for years when he was a child, and there was no explanation for it at all. I ended up writing about it in my book, Teaching the Living, because I think it's such a profound example of specifically how children end up picking up on stuff that we just have no concept about. And he had no way of knowing this story either, which is interesting. The family didn't know about it. Matt didn't discover the intricacies of this story until I'd say about 5 years ago. And we had no idea. It's just not a piece of Alberta history that's, waved around a whole lot, and, for obvious reasons. But was really interesting. So I wanted to read you guys a little bit of what Matt said about what he saw when he was a kid, so you guys can hear it firsthand, because as I say, I ended up writing an entire chapter about it in my book because I thought it was just fascinating. And at this point, Matt was talking to his one of his friends when they were kids, and the other boy had known about the movie Cujo, this it's a giant dog, rabid dog, and stuff like that. And Matt immediately related it to this experience, who he had told nobody about, of this monster coming through his window. So I will read you Matt's words so you can get a grab on that. "What's Cujo?" I asked. The name sent a chill down my spine. "Cujo is this big scary dog that goes bad and kills all these kids," said my neighbor Alex, with the authority and demure of a 7-year-old over his now mystified 4-year-old audience. My blood runs beyond cold over his words and over the name. It actually has a name, and this guy knows it. I'm speechless and transfixed. "I only told my parents and my nana about the dumb dog. How do you know about it? How do you know what it's called?" "If you're not careful, it's going to come for you tonight and take you right out of your bed," he said gleefully. "He comes every night," I tell him, as his smile melts from his chin into a look of puzzlement. "Right through my window," I continue. "He shakes my bed off the floor, growling and snarling. He comes from that lonely J-train yard on Sesame, as tall as my house and thin, with really long spindly arms and weird black spider fingers. His head looks like a wicked terrier, a Scottie, the dogs with the beards, but with wild, horrifying eyes and sharp, pointy ears. He's way scarier, and he's way bigger. Nastier, a giant, a monster." "No, Cujo's a dumb movie I saw," he tells me, attempting to enliven the sudden, abnormal hue his face has taken on. "You don't see him? He comes when you get really hot and when you can't move in your bed. I can't even yell for my mom. It's that scary. Wait until you hear it growl," I inform him. "It sounds like there are 1,000 of him in that growl. I bet it'll come for you, right through your window, and you'll see." So he had just this incredible story with that just completely reshaped his childhood, and it was so fascinating because, as I say, he was not a kid who was out there watching frightening movies or anything like that, and here he was minutes from the place where Swift Runner had claimed that he was having the same experience happen, way more than 100 years ago. It was a very interesting case, and it just goes to show just how much people can really pick up on, I think, the energy in an area, and how much of that emotional impact I think that we leave behind. It's so interesting that, you know, when we think about a thought, and we think about how our thoughts are, you know, so fleeting, you know, as we're going along in life. But what we don't realize is that our thoughts are actual physical things. Our thoughts are connecting synapses. They're firing energy within our brains, and energy sticks around. So when we get things that have an emotional impact on a space, then we end up getting some really interesting effects in our environment. So, you know, is it possible that we can leave these thought forms, leave these impressions behind? It's, you know, people have debated that for a long time. I personally think that's very possible. You know, the fact that we can leave these impressions and reshape our environment. And it's fascinating. Oh, good morning, Chrissy. Good morning, Josiah. Good morning, Holly. Nice to see you guys. So it's a very interesting subject, because when we start to realize what we're thinking, what we're projecting, you know, we're kind of leaving behind, right? We're leaving behind for you know, the other people, for those histories, and we do reshape the environments that we're experiencing. We really do. It's absolutely fascinating. So the process that I wanted to give you guys today, because I always give you guys a process, and the one I wanted to offer to you guys today is the idea of being able to sit still, quiet your mind, and listen. And listen. So many people ask me, they're like, how do these mediums communicate with non-physical? How do you do it? What is that about this non-physical energy that you can tune into? And really it is about being able to listen and being able to stop, being able to quiet your mind, and be able to allow yourself to feel that emotion, that positive emotion, start to run through you. Because if you can stop the crazy mint, because we're all crazy, we are all crazy as hell. If we can stop the crazy mint in our brains and stop that thing that we do where we're telling ourselves a negative story or we've got negative thought going on, if we can stop doing that, then what's interesting is that our emotional state automatically will start to rise to joy. It really will. Our natural state of being is joy when we're not telling ourselves stupid stories. So my job for you guys today is to try that, to be able to still your mind, be able to get yourself into that state of joy, and then listen and see what's there. See if there's a response through emotion, through imagery, through thought, through all of that, and be open to what that's going to look like. Give that a try and then write it down. I find if I'm doing it, I have to write it down, because if I don't, as soon as I find my vibration slips again, I find that my, all of the imagery or messages and anything that I end up getting is gone. It's just, it's gone. So write it down. Get your journals, write it down. And whatnot, but just start to practice listening, and it's amazing, what you'll get. Don't expect to get stuff, right off the bat. It takes some focus to be able to just turn off the crazy, right? Because we're all little nuts. Turn off the crazy in your head and listen, but give that a try. I have a reading today for us that is really relevant to this. Super relevant, and I love this book. This is Eckhart Tolle's Oneness with All Life. I know I've read from this a couple of times already. It is such a cool book because it is snippets from his full work, A New Earth, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. So if you don't have A New Earth or Oneness with All Life, I highly recommend it because it's awesome. All right. So check this out. What is arising now is not a new belief system, a new religion, spiritual ideology, or mythology. We're coming to the end of not only mythologies, but also ideologies and belief systems. The change goes deeper than the content of your mind, deeper than your thoughts. In fact, at the heart of the new consciousness lies the transcendence of thought, the newfound ability of rising above thought, of realizing a dimension within yourself that is infinitely more vast than thought. You then no longer derive your identity, your sense of who you are, from the incessant stream of thinking that in the old consciousness you take to be yourself. What a liberation to realize that the voice in my head is not who I am. Who am I then? The one who sees that. The awareness that is prior to thought. The space in which the thought or the emotion or sense of perception happens. I love that. Love, 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 love is that we are not our thinking. We are not our thinking, people. We are not. We are so much more than that. Our thinking is a tool. It's not who we are. You know, we really get attached to the stories that we tell ourselves. We really do. It's just crazy. You know, we really do. We tell ourselves a story and we go on and you know, and we get attached to that and we think that's who we are, and it isn't. So Arnold wanted to ask, how do I feel about spirit boards, like Ouija boards and stuff like that? Honestly, it's the same thing. It's you know, a spirit board or anything like that. Again, you can have some really positive results. It all comes down to where you are on that emotional scale. Where are you? Because if you're in fear or grieving or upset or depression, you're going to have a negative experience. If you get into the experience of on the feeling place of joy or excitement or passion or, curiosity or anything like that, you're going to have a really positive experience. So it comes down to that same principle, you know. It's really interesting. So I wanted to give you guys an awesome to-do today that had to do with our Wendigo and things like that. There is an amazing website that you guys can check out. I will post the link on the Entity Seeker Facebook page. And it is just the coolest thing. It is AmericanFolklore.net. Okay, AmericanFolklore.net. And this is the coolest site because it is not only the North American folklore, so the United States and Canada, but it's also a collection of history from Mexico. It's got fables and folklore and like ghost stories and myths and legends and all sorts of things. And it covers so much. It's so cool. So AmericanFolklore.net is really neat. It's such a cool experience to be able to go through and read about all sorts of things. Stories like Crow Brings the Daylight, Attack of the Mammoth, all sorts of stuff that has been passed down that often get lost and we don't get to hear about it and or aren't told to our specific cultures or whatever it is, and it's just a really cool rabbit hole that you guys can go down and check out. It's just really neat, and it's really cool to be able to educate ourselves and enjoy pieces of our own history, because we get lost in pop culture and all of that kind of thing, and so much of the origins of a lot of paranormal phenomena stem from these First Nations people and these cultures. And I think it's so crucial to be able to go and look back on this and not hold it as something that is fake or just a storybook or something like that. But so much of the time there is truth within those, there really is. It's incredible. How many cultures, say for example, would tell foreigners about things like the gorilla and stuff like that, and the gorilla was folklore, right? For ages, it was just it didn't exist, and then all of a sudden somebody saw a gorilla. So it's just, I think that's really cool. So that's a great website to check out. So that being said, we have to do our healthcare affirmations today, because if we don't, it just seems like something's missing. Seems like something's missing in my day if I don't do it. So, all right, everybody take a breath. It is natural for my body to be well. Even if I don't know what to do in order to get better, my body does. I have trillions of cells with individual consciousness, and each know how to achieve their individual balance. When this condition began, I didn't know what I know now. I don't need to understand the cause of this illness. I only need to gently, eventually release this illness. It doesn't matter how it got started, because it's reversing its course right now. And there's no hurry about any of this. My body knows what to do. Well-being is natural to me. My inner being is intricately aware of my physical body. My cells are asking for what they need in order to thrive, and Source is answering all of those requests. I'm in very good hands. My only work is to relax and breathe, and I can do that easily. And everybody take a breath. Thank you guys so much for yet another amazing spiritual healthcare. I love it. I love it every morning. You guys just are amazing. We've got some cool subjects coming up tomorrow. Also, I've gotten a lot of requests for people for signed copies of Teaching the Living. I'm going to be ordering a bunch more in the next short while. I will let everybody know when I have them, and then you guys can buy one. So if you want it now, then you can go to Amazon. Amazon has it. It's Teaching the Living from Heartbreak to Happiness in a Haunted Home. So if you guys are looking for it and you want it sooner, then it's there. But if not, then as I say, wait, and you can order a signed copy off of me too. So I hope you guys have an amazing Monday. I hope it's awesome, and as I say, we've got some really, really cool stuff to chat about tomorrow. Everything from paranormal TV shows and infrasound and EMF and a bunch of things. So we will attack all of it tomorrow. And then this week as well, we're going to be doing an episode on well-being and water and paranormal phenomenon and what all of that means. Also, that request came in from a good friend of mine, Dr. Cal Cooper. So we're going to be tackling that this week too. And I will see you guys tomorrow, right here on Spiritual Healthcare. Bye, everybody.